markets. I give you the markets update now. The JSE expected to open to lower global markets today as traders wait to see what the latest U.S. non-farm payrolls, which shows that the total number of paid workers in the world's largest economy. This includes certain categories and other data being released later today. Matete Thulare, head of foreign exchange execution at Rand Merchant Bank, joining us now to tell us how the JSE is performing in early trade. Mr. Thulare, top of the morning to you, sir. Let's start with the Rand, which seems to be tracking the losses, or should we say it's tracking gains this week, or should we say lost gains, but now we're back over the 18 Rand to the dollar mark. Where exactly do we locate the currency at this stage? You'll forgive my inability to articulate this question better, but I'm just as confused.
Tolly, happy Friday. Look, you're not the only one who's confused. I can tell you that even the markets are very confused, including the Rand itself. I mean, we weakened earlier this morning ahead of the highly anticipated US jobs numbers, as you said earlier. I mean, this is expected around 2:30 this afternoon. And obviously, this is going to give us clues around what the US Reserve Bank is going to do in terms of their next interest rate move. Now, when you just look at the Rand from January this year till where we are today, we've weakened about 12% against the dollar. So that's just quite a magnificent, weakness in the Rand. But obviously it's been alluded to, obviously all the negative sentiment and all the geopolitical tensions and also the uncertainty that we've seen globally. Now, from a Federal Reserve point of view, they have showed no intention of backing down with regards to the aggressive rate hike that we are going to see from them, with some policymakers yesterday already emphasizing the fight against inflation is ongoing. They are still going to be resolute. They are still not prepared to change course and talk about them potentially cutting rates. That will filter through to the local market, especially next month when we have Lesetja Kganyago and team sitting down for the last MPC for the year. And like most emerging markets, the Rand is obviously susceptible to global drivers, obviously the US monetary policy. And what's compounding issues is even the prolonged load shedding that we have locally, also compounded by issues such as Transnet that obviously will feed through into the negative sentiment for the Rand.
Let's talk about the United Transport Union, in short, UNTU, which represents some of the workers at the South African ports and freight rail operator, that's Transnet. They've told their members to take to the streets. What will be the implications of such a disruption to the economy?
So look, I mean, if you think about it, I think this is a wage dispute with the two major unions. And I mean, this is a move that will hurt exports and really key exports, including mineral resources. I mean, this strike will really paralyze the freight rail services and also impact, the ports. I mean, Transnet has been operating way below capacity due to a shortage of locomotives. There's been issues such as the poor maintenance and vandalism, as well as theft of infrastructure, which has cost a lot of mining companies billions in rands of potential revenue. Now, Transnet has said that their strike is illegal, and obviously the unions had not followed the proper protocol in terms of the labor laws. And, some of the lawyers from Transnet had already written to them on October the 3rd saying that their industrial action would be illegal, as some of the workers involved in these strikes are essential service providers, and obviously they're restricted from going to these strikes. But if you think about it, Chloe, I mean, coal is one of South Africa's largest foreign exchange earners, and a rail dysfunction there has obviously hit our exports, for things such as chrome, iron ore, manganese, and already the issues that we've seen out at Transnet, they've cost the mining sector things like 16 billion rands in lost coal exports, about another 17 billion rand lost in iron ore exports. So just a further, issues with regards to what we're seeing now will obviously impact the economy, and obviously it will also impact the fiscus when Minister Godongwana also has to report the medium-term budget statement numbers at the end of the month.
Yeah, let's quickly touch on company news. Vodacom Safaricom has started operations in Ethiopia. This is a year and a half after receiving the first private sector license to provide communication services in that country. Your assessment of this latest development?
So, look, if anything, they're trying to capitalize on the surging demand for mobile network. And obviously, if you think about it, just in the 3.5 weeks that they've been in operation, they've signed about 200,000 subscribers. And obviously, if you remember, Ethiopia is obviously Africa's second biggest population. So it just shows you that this surging demand is something that they're really gearing themselves up for. And on the back of that, they have alluded to the fact that they're going to spend about $300 million in capital expenditure over the next 2 years, over the next 2 to 3 years. So that's about R1 billion, $1 billion that they're going to be spending. And obviously for them, this is obviously saying that, look, this is a growth market. And what's obviously coming through from the latest financial statements from Vodacom, they're expecting this, capex to break even in about 4 years. So that tells you really that even the EBITDA, which is the tax, the revenue numbers after taxes, depreciation, and amortization, that margin is about 40% in just 10 years. So, I mean, everyone keeps speaking about Africa as the next growth phase, and obviously with the population and obviously the rollout of infrastructure and telecoms. And I think Safaricom, which is obviously a consortium of some of the biggest telecoms, I think they're really gearing themselves up and they're really going to do well over the next couple of years.
Let's conclude the conversation with the UK. That country expected to experience blackouts, we are told, and it is said that this winter the blackouts are going to be unavoidable in that country. It does seem that the energy crisis is not exclusive to South Africa then.
Exactly, Toli. When this statement came up, I think it just rang bells, and obviously it just shows you that we're not the only ones. I mean, such an event would mean consumers in different parts of the UK will be notified a day in advance of 3-hour blocks of where their power will be cut off. But the emergency plan needs to be approved by King Charles on the recommendation of the Business Secretary. Now, the National Grid, in their latest outlook, which obviously includes for the first time the impact of having no electricity imports from continental Europe, this event would obviously trigger emergency measures for the UK. And also, this also rings a bell for us locally. They have said that they would also include firing up some of their reserve coal generators and leaning heavily on large consumers to reduce their demand at peak hours. So they've also said, look, some of the initiatives that they want to also do to manage this is to call it into action 5 coal-powered plants and obviously also launch what they call a demand flexibility, where they'll encourage businesses and consumers to use power outside of peak demand periods. Now, this, outlook comes at a usually period of time where the European season is going into winter, and obviously now we compounded by the mere fact that Russia is now starting to reduce their natural gas exports into Europe. This is on the back of the geopolitical tension between Russia and Ukraine. So no one could have accurately predicted that this would happen, especially in a complex situation where you've got winter out in Europe and obviously reduced gas imports into the country, and obviously now that equals to load shedding, which is something that we know very well as South Africans.
I can tell you one thing, is going to be a very, very tough winter for some European countries. All right, Matete Thulare, let's leave it there. Thank you very much for that market update, Head of Foreign Exchange Execution at Rand Merchant Bank.